left center field, hit a long way. Out on the run is Liriano, and he makes the catch! An amazing catch! Here comes Iyer.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Sport and Pastime. This one is a very special one. It's about the retirement of a great. A lot of players in sport retire, stay in a place, and then they have the halo behind their head. But there are very few that make a huge impact in the sport as such. And one of them has just recently retired. Virat Kohli has said goodbye to Test cricket, a format which he championed and really made it cool, as a lot of former cricketers say. And he's not bothered to complete 10,000 runs, though really that does not make a difference to the value and the greatness that he brought to the game. And I think today me and Prem are going to discuss what made Virat Kohli a great test player, and was the timing of his retirement right, or was he forced into it? Prem?
Hi, I'm Prem, and like Faisal said, lots to discuss. There is the Virat Kohli retirement, obviously. There is also IPL is heading into its final phase with the threat of monsoons hanging over it, and India is about to begin a five-test series in England. So, yeah, lots happening. Let's get to it.
Right. So, Prem, India is always known to have cricketers who've been very obsessed with numbers and landmarks matter to them. But were you surprised that Kohli didn't really follow that script? He was just a few runs away from making 10,000 test runs, but he still called it quits. Ravi Shastri said that he had another 2-3 years left in him, and a lot of others believe the same. What's your take on that, Prem?
Yeah, I'm not sure that he wasn't conscious of his runs. For instance, because if you remember, there was, I saw it on social media and also on some news channels, this interview with a former coach in Delhi who said that he had spoken to Virat, and Virat had said, he had spoken to Virat asking him if he was going to go to domestic to fine tune his game ahead of the England series. And Virat said he wanted to play for India A in England to get his groove back. And he specifically said, I want to score 3 or 4 centuries in England. So, I mean, a player's century basically helps the team, and Virat scoring centuries from the number 4 position would have, obviously been to the benefit of the team, but it would also have, let's say, rewritten recent records. For instance, if you look at Virat's career, in the early phase of his test career, he was, if I remember correctly, averaging around 39. And then he just took off somewhere around late 2014. It would be September, October, I think. And from that
Yes.
point till December 2019, he was averaging in excess of 63. That's huge. And then suddenly it all fell off a cliff. From January 2020 till the day he retired, his average was a very ordinary 30.7. So I suspect that that also would have been on his mind, that that's not how he wants to go out. But yeah, as it turns out, he has quit short of certain landmarks that I think he could have achieved. And that raises the question of, did he leave with his head in a good place, with his mind saying, okay, I'm done? Or did he leave because he was more or less forced to leave? Or
Yeah.
whether he
I think
was
it's a bit of,
pushed, whether he was
yeah.
pushed into
I
a
think
corner and decided that,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's a
sorry, go
bit
on.
of it's a little bit of that. What I understand from speaking to a few people in the BCCI and some of the players is that he wasn't really going very well with Gautam Gambhir. He was in the team because, believe it or not, Rohit Sharma was a buffer really between the board as well as the coach. And, Rohit Sharma is an amazing manager. And in many conversations, Virat would joke that, till Rohit is there, I'm playing. And the moment Rohit goes, I don't know, I'm going to follow suit. I'm not going to continue because he was not really getting along with the team management. And I think the other thing on his mind was that he didn't want to play under Shubman Gill in England. Not that he has anything against Shubman Gill. I think they have a very good rapport, but I think that at some level there was some kind of hints thrown his way that he might be leading England. There was some hints thrown his way that he might be leading in Australia when Rohit didn't wasn't there for the first test. Then he came back, didn't do well. They were thinking about a change of leadership. There was no serious conversation, but there were hints dropped, and you know he was getting that, he was absorbing that from it, and he thought that there might be another chance for him to get the captaincy back because admit it or not, he's at least in numbers clearly by a mile the most successful Indian test captain ever. He's got, I think, more than 42 test wins. I think out of 68, that's almost like 10, 15 more than what Dhoni's done, and that's massive. I think all these together made a difference because I don't think he'd be scared of going to England because there's no Stuart Broad anymore. There's no James attack, but still, it's not what it used to. It is a bit blunt compared to what it would be if Broad and Anderson were playing and at their peak. So, I think all those factors added together possibly made him change his mind because Kohli isn't the easiest of people. He's done all that and he's earned his reputation and his, the caliber of player that he is. And I think to a large extent, Rohit Sharma was playing a very, very important buffer role in his stint with the Indian team. And I think once that buffer was gone, I think Kohli realized that it was going to be an uphill task.
Yeah, to that point about Gautam Gambhir Kohli relations, Gambhir has been, how do you put it, mounting a PR blitz of sorts. There was this recent interview that he had done where he talked about team dynamics and his relationship with the various players. Went out of his way to say that all these are media created stories. Um, you, me, and a lot of other journalists actually do get to hear parts of what is happening behind the scenes, and I'm not particularly convinced by Gambhir's protestations that everything is well in the dressing room. Gambhir being Gambhir, he needs a captain who he can dominate. He doesn't need a captain who has, let's say, more of how do I put it, more stature than he has. So guys like Rohit, like Virat, and all of that would be anathema to somebody like that. I think the sad part in all this is, I mean, we both worked in corporate environments. Uh, we have these annual appraisals. There is a reason why this happens. It is when we know how the organization views us. What does the organization see as our strengths? What do they want us to contribute more of? What does the organization see as our weaknesses? What does the organization want us to work on? And what overall does the organization think that our value is and what our future is within that organizational framework, right? The same thing applies in
Correct.
sport. Every now and again you want to know where you are vis-a-vis the team. How do the coach and the selectors think of your game? What do they think needs improvement? What do they think the future is? Because that to a large extent informs my own thinking about whether I should work harder or whether it's time for me to leave. And for me, and it's not now. Even when back in the day when we were reporting for Redif, it's a common grouse that we used to write about, that the BCCI does not have such detailed conversations with its players. They
True.
don't sit them down individually. I mean, after the BGT, the BJP, I mean, the BCCI, why am I saying BJP? But then it's one and the same thing to an
Freudian slip.
extent. Freudian slip, exactly. But the BCCI should have sat each individual player down and had these kind of conversations. What they did do was a farcical sort of review where they spent some time with Gautam Gambhir, they spent some time with Rohit Sharma and said, okay, you can't carry so many bags, your wife can't be with you for so long. All of that,
Yeah.
none of that was the issue in Australia. The issue was completely different. Uh,
Correct.
so, so I mean, it's not just Virat, right? Nobody has a sense of where they are vis-a-vis their prospects in the team. Uh,
That's true.
so, so yeah, I mean, I would imagine that Virat spent a considerable portion of his time after the BJT feeling a sense of confusion. On the one hand, there are his personal ambitions, and being ambitious is not wrong. When you say ambition,
Mhm.
people immediately think in terms of politics and this, that, and the other. No, I don't think so. I think as a professional, I want to do well. I want to do the best I can. I want to be the best I can, and that's not at all wrong. And even in the context of a team sport, my individual contribution helps. Bumrah will want to take wickets every time he bowls. That's not a bad thing. In fact, it benefits the team. Virat will want to score centuries every time he goes out to bat, and his centuries go to the team. I mean, it's not like he's carrying it home separately. So, he is an ambitious person. It's very, very possible that he had ambitions beyond the runs that he could score or beyond his individual performances. He could have thought, look, I mean, if you think of Virat's career, there was a time when he took over a team in transition and he
Yes.
shaped it into the best test team in the world. Not for a year, not
Yeah.
for 2 years, for the better
42
part of,
months.
yeah,
42
exactly.
months they were number one. India was number one for 42 months in Test cricket.
Correct. And it is not even like, during that period, the record was padded with a lot of games against second rate countries. As it turns out, India has played all the Sena countries over and over again during that
Absolutely.
period.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, if I was Virat, I would think I did it once. Now, here with Rohit going, here is another period of transition. I think I have what it takes to see the team through this period of transition. He's not saying that he wants to be, I mean, he may not be thinking that he wants to be captain for the next WTC cycle or for the next 3, 4 years or whatever. But it's perfectly possible that he had this ambition that he wants to be the person who helps his team, and a team largely built by him, by the way, uh, through this period of transition, get it back on its feet, and step out on a high. And I think that ambition and the lack of clarity altogether combined to make him suddenly throw up his hands in the middle of the IPL and say, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, especially when he's doing so well. I mean, if he was struggling at the IPL, you could imagine that, his not just his head, but even his body wasn't helping him. But I mean, like we discussed, he's the fittest in the world cricket, not just in the Indian team. So fitness isn't an issue. I think I think the fact remains that once Bumrah said that he doesn't want to be the captain because I think load management is going to be a very big issue with him. I think he's currently playing IPL, uh, not against his wishes, but I think too many games. He could be probably looking at rehab and preparing for the England tour more than playing the IPL right now. But so maybe that's thrown a spanner in the works of his whole rehab and his recovery. But once that happened, I think it wasn't such a bad idea. And I think you teased it that, Kohli coming back just for that one series and a Shubman Gill as his understudy, as his vice captain, learning from him, working as a leadership team wouldn't have been such a bad idea. I mean, here's a man who's won you the first ever Test series in Australia, has won you back-to-back away series in the West Indies. I think after 22 years, won you a series in Sri Lanka. These are big records. I mean, the Dhonis and the Sachin Tendulkars and Rohit Sharma, none of these guys could do that, what he managed to pull off. So there's definitely something there. I know there have been a few players giving interviews over the last 1 year, 2 years, when Kohli went off the captaincy and started saying that he's very biased about some players and, he's ruined a few careers. But when you look at his record and say, okay, 40 out of 68 test matches, I mean, how badly could he have done, or how biased could he have been that he's won more than he's lost and created that record? So I would say that would have been a really good move to give him the captaincy. And now you're going into an English tour, and it's not always going to be easy. Whatever the bowling attack is, England is a hostile place. Not as hostile as Australia, but it can be pretty hostile. So it's not going to be very easy for the Indian team.
Yeah, and I mean, you just brought up that number, 40 out of 68. One of the things that Kohli will be known for when the history of this period is finally written is that he overturned Indian cricket's dogma. It was always, prepare turning tracks at home, win with spin, all of that. He said it
Not him.
doesn't matter whether it's yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's home or away. Pace is important, and he built up this battery of very aggressive fast bowlers. I mean, starting with the era of
Yes.
Umesh Yadav, of Ishant Sharma, of briefly Bhuvneshwar Kumar, who brought both pace and swing to the mix.
Yes.
And then the next generation of fast bowlers, the Shardul Thakurs, the Mohammad Shamis, Jasprit Bumrah finally. Uh,
They've all
and what
thrived
is
under
interesting,
him. They've all thrived under him.
yeah, and because he relied on pace and he let them know that they were important, that they were not there just to take the shine off the ball before, Yuzi Chahal or Ashwin or Jadeja or Kuldeep came in. But what is interesting to me is the if you ask a general question, if you ask which is the one international captain who made pace the primary weapon of a test team, everybody would say Clive Lloyd.
Yeah.
Famously harnessed the four fast bowlers. This is after, under Sobers and even under early Clive Lloyd, the West Indies had sort of balanced pace and spin, tried to be all things to all people, and failed. And then
Yeah.
Lloyd said enough is enough. Unrelenting pace attack. You had Lance Gibbs for a while to provide some measure of spin, but it was non-stop pace. It was a barrage.
True.
So you would say Lloyd is the one who weaponized pace. But here's the interesting thing: Kohli's record as a Test captain is better than Lloyd's.
Yeah. Actually.
I mean, there are people like Ponting, for instance, who have far better captaincy records in terms of the proportion of matches won to matches played and all of that. But that's a different argument. The point is, Kohli was no less when it came to realizing the value of pace, and I think that's one of the lasting contributions that in the final analysis you would think. And because Kohli emphasized pace, one of the things that has happened and which will be of long range benefit to India is that pace became cool again. India started producing more and more fast bowlers. We have the Harshit Ranas, we have the Khalil Ahmeds, we have the Anshul Kambods, we have there's an assembly line now of pace bowlers coming through, and a lot of that credit should go to Kohli because suddenly somebody who's bowling fast thinks that I have a chance. I don't want to
Hmm.
take this guy's name, but I remember somebody who was in my school who played with me who was a very good fast bowler. Even at the school's level, he was quick. And S. Venkatraghavan, of all people, who was then the school coach, went to him and said, fast bowling, say, you're not going to get anything. uh, you're not going to make you'll have a career playing first division league, maybe get into the Ranji Trophy side, but even there,
Hmm.
what are you going to do in Ranji Trophy bowling fast? He said, you are tall, you are agile, why don't you change, why don't you become a wicket keeper? That should make it fairly obvious, but I'm not going to thing. And that is how a very promising fast bowler became a national wicketkeeper. That was those days. Today, it's like everybody
Okay.
wants to bowl fast. And
True.
why do you want to bowl fast? Because, yeah, fast bowling is cool. Fast bowling is valued, not just cool. It is valued in the team thing. I mean, if you look at the India A squad, for instance, they have, in a sense, more fast bowlers than spinners.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. They have Akashdeep, Harshit Rana, Kamboj, Khalil Ahmed. They've
Yeah,
got, yeah, Shardul Thakur. Yeah.
right.
They've got all the fast bowlers. They're taking a lot of them. But Prem, this is about his captaincy and about what he achieved and what he's given and made Test cricket cool. And at a time when IPL was so hot, he still put all his effort and his heart into Test cricket. It was like what Shane Warne possibly did to spin in cricket. He made spin so cool, and here's Kohli making Test cricket cool. But there's a big question mark. There's a lot of the word goat is used a lot with Virat Kohli. But when you look at him, I mean, he's amongst the top four batsmen from India: Sunil Gavaskar, Rahul Dravid, Sachin Tendulkar, and then there's Virat Kohli. Not in that order. But my question still remains, like you mentioned at the start, that there was this period from 2014 to 2019 when he was in sublime form. So, like a player in the greatest form of his life for those 5 years. He was racing to hundreds like, they were going out of fashion. Uh, would he still count as a great given the fact that he's had a very very amazing phase and then it didn't start great, it's not ending in a great manner. We've had so many conversations, everybody's had conversations how he's had, like, I think just 300s in 5 years. uh, does that still make him one of the greatest cricketers from India?
So, I mean, this is something that I've written multiple times, and I've even said that, I think, on a couple of our podcasts before. But there are two things that I don't like doing. One of them is comparing across eras. So I don't
Hmm.
like conversations that go on the greatest of all time thing, because how do you compare, for instance, a Virat Kohli with a Sunil Gavaskar? The context is different. What they had to accomplish is different. Sunil Gavaskar, for instance, had to come into a team that was not known to play pace and to turn that conversation around. To say that India plays pace as well as anybody else. Uh, yeah, and he was the tent pole for a team that had good players of pace, like Mohinder Ramanath, for instance, Dilip Sardesai. Uh, Various of those players actually played pace at its peak. How do you compare these two? I don't know. I don't think that runs are a basis of comparison. For instance, if you start looking at the total runs scored by Virat Kohli versus others to make this comparison, then you would say Mohammad Yunus. I mean, Yunus Khan is a better batsman, or Mahela Jayawardene and Kumar Sangakkara are all better batsmen. All of them are part of the 10,000 club. They have some of them have better overall averages than Virat does. Some of them have more centuries than Virat does. How do you compare? I
Correct.
think I think in and of itself, Virat's career is a tent pole as far as the history of Indian cricket is concerned. It is not the only tent pole. By the way, you mentioned four players. I would add, say, for instance, people like VVS Lakshman to the mix. In a different context, I would add Mohinder Ramanath to the mix. So there are these periods when players have been. Remember the time when Mohinder Ramanath was being rated, and by no less than Imran Khan, for instance, being rated
Yes.
as the best player of pace in the world. And this is at a
True.
time when you
Yeah.
had fantastic fast bowlers everywhere. You had Lillian Thompson, you had the West Indies battery, you had Imran and his lot. You had Bob Willis and company in England. It's not like it
Yeah.
was. I mean, lot of people say that this is a good era for bowling. It's not that that era was bad for bowling. In fact, it was good.
Right.
So I don't want to go into this thing of was Virat among the greatest Indian players? Does Virat's career qualify him uh, for the for the tag of one of Indian cricket's extraordinary performers? Definitely. Even taking into account the fact that his tail end of his career, the last 3 years, his performance fell off a cliff, and that's something that I've never been able to understand, because gradual lapse of form is something you can understand and you can explain. Say, hand-eye coordination can be a problem. You can have a problem with your eyesight gradually diminishing. We talked about this earlier when we talked about what
Yeah,
was going
yeah,
wrong with Kohli's form. All of that can happen, but you can't be a great player in December and a very ordinary player in January.
true,
you know it
true.
So what happened during that period, I don't know. One of the things that I keep going back to is, it is around that time, if I remember correctly, that first he took a break, and then, if you remember, he gave an interview where he said that mentally he had gone through various struggles. He in fact said he was faking his intensity, hoping that he could finally make it.
Hmm.
uh, I don't know how much of it was mental during that period, or that triggered the fall and then the body followed. Or was it the other way around?
Correct.
Was he aware of some sort of creeping issue and that's triggered his mental issues? I don't know. But to your larger question, I think Virat is a great. I'm not very invested in ranking him among the greats, or addressing the question of whether his contribution is greater than somebody else's contribution.
No,
I
I
mean, you
think the
can argue
question is
it any
never
which
about.
way, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah,
the argument is not about contribution. I mean, we've discussed that. There's no argument about that. It's huge, but I think that there is a way of how you could compare and look at players of how they've done. I know it's around in different eras and conditions are different, but a normal hallmark for an Indian or an Asian cricketer usually is how they perform on tours of England and tours of Australia. And if you were to look at a Rahul Dravid, a Sachin Tendulkar, Gavaskar, and you were to look at a Virat Kohli, you would see that Virat Kohli amongst the 4, 5, even if you take VVS Lakshman, even Sehwag, if in the mix, Virat Kohli's had almost 3 or 4, maybe 5 series in Australia and England together, where he's been in the low 20s or 25s, and we're talking about 3 test matches and up, not the one off, in that, because even a Rahul Dravid and even a Sunil Gavaskar had 24, 25 average, because, it's just 2 innings in a test match. But Virat Kohli, if you see, he's been high, it's been very high, and then there have been times when he's just completely floundered on a tour of England and Australia. When you look at a Sachin Rahul, you see the intensity. I think the last time you saw Sachin and Rahul struggle on a tour of Australia or England, they didn't play again. 2011 was one of those. Of course, Sachin continued for a few more years. But for Rahul Dravid, VVS Lakshman, it was curtains. They realized it was over for them. But somehow for Virat Kohli, nobody ever questioned that. Nobody ever spoke about that, because, for me, it was always that, the Pontings of the world or the Callis of the world, whenever they have a big series like that, England, Australia, or, you know, they always come up trumps and they always perform well. I mean, Sachin was out of form on that tour of Australia, and you remember that great knock he played where he didn't play a single cover drive. I mean,
yeah.
that's really what marks out greatness for me. So, not comparing across eras, but the question remains that how can someone have so many failures on tours of Australia, England, which are, in a sense, the flagship series where an Indian, Pakistani, Sri Lankan batsman wants to prove himself and do well. That was my only argument about Kohli. And Kohli in the 4, 5 would rank very low if it would come to that measurement of England and Australia tour.
Yeah, I mean, from that yardstick, I would agree. One of the peculiarities of Kohli's career is, when he performs well, he is unbelievable. For example, his first tour of Australia as captain, and that too, he suddenly found the captaincy handed to him. He begins with those, if you remember, those 2 centuries that
Oh yeah.
almost seals two centuries in a match, not two centuries, 4 centuries in that series, 2 centuries in a match. It
Hmm.
almost pulls off an incredible win. I mean, you're chasing 364 on the last day and you come within 40, 45 runs of that thing, largely because of Kohli's second century of the match. Again, if you think of England, went to England, had a horrible season. 4 years later, goes back to England and has the kind of season that the kind of series that people only dream about. Uh,
Correct.
so, unlike some of the names that you mentioned, people like Dravid, for instance, or Lakshman or Tendulkar or whatever, their peaks and their troughs didn't have this remarkable gulf between them. It was not
Exactly.
either on top of the cliff or at the bottom of the valley. Uh, yeah, they had periods when they eased off or they weren't performing at their peak, but it wouldn't be a dramatic fall. Neither would it be a
Hmm.
sensational spike. They played to potential pretty much all the time. They played a bit below potential. I don't know. I mean, I suppose if one of these days Virat writes an autobiography and he actually talks about not just the runs he scored, but of how he was feeling at various times in his career, we'll probably start getting answers for that. I actually hope he writes a book or that somebody writes it for
Don't worry
him.
about that,
Uh,
Don't worry about that because what I know is that he's waiting to retire from all formats of the game, and he's promised that he will, in his book or his interviews, tell all of what all happened and the mess that was created, and how they made things so difficult for him. Right from a very famous cricketer who was at the helm of cricket affairs and going down to other officials, players in the team, coaches. I mean, he's got a lot of it inside him. He's just keeping quiet because he's still playing. But believe you me, you'll read that. You'll read that crazy book, which will have some sensational, stories to tell from his side.
Probably. I mean, I've always felt that there should be books by people like Saurav, like Sachin ruined his one opportunity with that stupid book that he co-authored with Boria Majumdar. I mean, I still have nightmares about that book because I remember editor at Redif, Nikhil Lakshman, asking me if I would review it. I got hold of a copy. I started reading, and I think on page 3, page 4, I found a line which said, "It is beyond dispute that my parents were supportive." And I was like, who writes this shit? What do you mean by it's beyond dispute that my parents? I mean, it was it was so bizarre. I wrote back to Nikhil saying, "Sorry, I can't review this because I'll probably use bad language." Uh, but I think that it would have benefited Indian cricket, not just from a prurient interest. I want to know what happened behind the scenes, but generally, it would have helped for people like Saurav, like Rahul, like VVS, so many other players, MS, so many other players to have written clinical, cold-eyed books, not just going after your pet peeves or whatever, but in the round, what worked, what didn't work, how it was in on the ground, behind the scenes, all of that would have been such a huge thing. And I hope at least Virat writes that kind of book as opposed to using the book as an opportunity to ventilate
Yeah.
various
No,
grievances.
I'm sure he'll pull out all the stories because you see the English and South Africans and the Australian cricketers, some of them, they've written fantastic. I mean, Nasir Hussain's
Yes,
autobiography is one of the best that I've ever read. Alan Donald's
true.
is amazing. They've been so honest, and it's a lot like I remember you always mention Agassi as one of the best benchmarks of how a autobiography should be written. And those two would really be up there because they're so open and honest about even their shortcomings and, their failures and the mistakes that they made without trying to justify it at any level. And that makes them so human and at the same time so believable that, they're in the end extraordinary players, but they are human beings at heart. And that makes it so
Yeah.
interesting. I really hope Virat does a book. I'll probably send his your email to him. Maybe you could write his book for him.
See, the thing is, I mean, you brought up Open. The reason why Open worked is not because uh, Agassi had a rich life or because J.R. Moringa is an absolutely brilliant writer. It is because of, and okay, even granting that Open, co-written by Agassi and Moringa, is probably to me the best sports biography ever, and I agree. Nasser Hussain's biography, for instance, is excellent. I think it works, particularly if you're working with another writer. I think it works for the player to be completely honest, to not hold anything back. The decision about what to put into the book and what to keep out, because I mean, it might cause unnecessary controversies or whatever, that is taken during the editing. When you're writing it, when you're drafting it, you need to put everything in there because that is when you know what the contours of the story are. But
True.
if the subject, in this case, say Virat or Agassi or whatever, if they start self censoring before, then the writer is getting an incomplete story. So the question of who co writes Virat's book would be actually a question of who does Virat trust to open up completely to, knowing that
Yeah.
confidences won't be betrayed.
True.
There's no way that
True.
I'm in that frame, so don't even think about it. But yeah, anyway,
Having
hopefully it comes.
Yeah, it will. It will. The question now remains is that with Virat gone from the Test team, Rohit Sharma not there, Ashwin's not there. Who is the next in line to take that important, number four batting position? Who's going to replace Virat Kohli? Who would you pick as your number four?
I think the question is actually numbers 1 to 4, because
Hmm.
somewhere along the way, Pant is going to be in at five, uh,
Yeah,
five maximum six, I think, as the bridge between Pant and then you have at seven. That is the middle order. I think your
correct.
one way of looking at it is if Shubman Gill and Yashasvi Jaiswal open, then your problem is you would probably want KL Rahul at four. KL Rahul as the player who has the defense in case of early wickets to sort of block the bowling from breaking through completely and then turn it around slowly. Or if he comes in an advantageous position, he has the shots and he has the ability to play them. Uh,
Correct.
but that is if you're opening with Gill and uh,
Yashasvi
Jaiswal. Yeah.
Jaiswal. Yeah.
What if you're opening, for instance, with Yashasvi Jaiswal and either KL Rahul or Sai Sudarshan? Then what happens?
Yeah.
Gill comes in at number three. You know who I would think in that context if you have an opening of Sai Sudarshan. I don't know if he'll make it to the first 11 in the first test. I'm not very convinced of that. I think it is more likely to be either Gill or KL as the opening partner for Jaiswal. The two scenarios, if it is Gill, then your issue is number three, not number four.
Yeah.
Number four would
Yeah.
probably
Number three
be
become.
KL. Yeah. If on the other hand, if it is KL, your logical number four would probably be, because you have KL, Yashasvi, Gill, so that solves the number three problem. Your number four, ideally, currently on form, looking at all the available options, to my mind, Shreyas Iyer.
Shreyas Iyer. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting
What
that
if
Shreyas
Shubman
is not
decides
part of
that?
the India team.
Yeah, what? No, he's going to join them. I think he's going to join after the second game or something. He's supposed to join the team. But my question was that Shubman Gill most probably is going to be the next Test captain. Uh, wouldn't he want to cement himself at three or four, because that's really where you start building your case for greatness, and the best batsman in the side usually bats over there. Wouldn't he want to do that with the additional pressure of captaincy? and let maybe KL Rahul open with Yashasvi. Or there is Sai Sudarshan, who I'm sure will go on the tour. I don't know if he'll play in the 11, but a Sai Sudarshan with a Yashasvi Jaiswal, and then you have maybe KL Rahul at 3, or maybe Shubman Gill at 3, and then Rahul at 4, Shreyas at 4, and then KL Rahul at 5. Because how long does KL Rahul have? How do we know how long KL Rahul is going to play for? I mean, he's got another 3 years, 4 years, but what's the long term, on the number 3 and number 4? Like somebody was just pointing out that from I think 94, 93 onwards, Sachin Tendulkar has been batting at number 4. And then almost immediately, Virat took over, which means from almost 1994 to 2024 25, that's almost 30 years. You've had two of the best batsmen, take that position and really take care of it and give it, do justice to that slot. So who would take that slot again? It seems to me like a very sacred slot. You don't want a makeshift guy over there.
Which is also why you need long term planning, which is what we talked about earlier. But to your question
Yeah.
about whether Gill will take number 3, I think it pretty much depends at this point on how the team management views the medium and long term, but also how Gill sees his own game. uh, I think the answer to the question of whether Gill wants to cement himself or slot himself into number 3 and make a bid for long term India's successor to the Sachins and the Kohlis and all of that depends on two things. One, how the team management thinks of. See, you have to start from the fact that the team management, the coach, and the selectors are now facing a period of abrupt transition. You lose one major player, it's tough. You lost two, and you've lost two in the top
Three,
four.
three if you count Ashwin, yeah. I mean, he's a bowler,
Yeah,
but yeah,
no,
from the team.
yeah, yeah, no. I wasn't thinking of the bowling at this point. I was thinking of the top four. You
Yeah, just
lose
the
two,
batting.
that's huge, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
the
huge.
team management has to think in terms of how are we going to manage the short term and the medium term. The long term, as players evolve and all that, we'll probably get our answers. For example, when Virat Kohli started, we didn't think that he was going to be this influential number 4. We thought he would be
True.
a good player. So same thing applies, right? Start of a career is no time
Yeah.
to figure out whether this guy can be the successor to a Tendulkar Kohli kind of number 4. I think
True.
one, the team management has to figure out what their opening combination is because a lot will depend on that. And two, I think they'll have to take into account Gill's own feeling about that role. Does Gill think that he is a natural opener who was demoted to number 3 because of Rohit Sharma, because of the need to accommodate Rohit Sharma, or does he think that he is comfortable at number 3 even now that Rohit is not there? Because if he thinks that he's a natural opener, then he will want, particularly if he's given the captaincy, he'll want to use uh, that that authority to take back his number 1 slot. In
Hmm.
which case we have issues because in which case the issue that will open up is your number 3 slot. You have Gill and Jaiswal
Yeah.
opening. You have KL as your natural number 4 for the short to medium term. Uh,
Correct.
so who's number 3? But if you flip it the other way around, and if you say KL Rahul as the senior pro and with a good defense, by the way, he's not just being slotted into the opening, he knows how to open. If
Yeah.
KL and Yashasvi open, two things. One, KL can be a calming influence on Yashasvi, and we've seen that happen earlier, where KL is sort of,
True.
you know, uh, shepherded him through a long innings. KL and Jaiswal opening brings Gill in at number 3, and then Shreyas Iyer slots in at number 4. With the caveat that this is a very this lineup at the end of the England tour is probably when you want to step back and say, okay, we've got a 2 year cycle in front of us. Is this the lineup we want to go with? Are there other options? Do we need to bring in a Sai Sudarshan, for instance? Or, I mean, what is our medium to long term plan? I think is something that the team management will have to think of during and immediately after the England tour. Because right now, like I said, your single biggest problem, if I'm the selector, is I'm saying, what the hell, man? I mean, I lose two senior professionals and the top two senior professionals all in one shot out of the blue. What am I doing?
Yeah. Would you bring in Karun Nair, Prem, given his form that he's had?
So Karun Nayar's form, look, I mean, at the domestic level, you've had multiple players who have shown form. Abhimanyu Easwaran, for instance.
Yeah, he's leading the
Karun
India
Nair,
A team.
yes.
That must say something.
Yeah. I don't know whether it is a SOP for him, like your India A, you keep leading India A, but there are players who have, and Karun Nair is a good player. I mean, what was it? 800 plus runs in Ranji Trophy.
Yeah, he's a good
He
player in
played
great
with,
form right now.
and also worth noting that he played with Northamptonshire. I think it was.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
he played in the county and did well. So I don't know. It's an option. I'm curious. I think tomorrow is when the selectors meet to announce the team. I'm seriously interested in who comes. But
Yeah.
for me,
We'll have to do another
these are the
podcast for that,
questions.
Prem.
Oh, yo, okay. But yeah, for me,
Yeah,
these are the considerations.
cool. That's interesting. And finally, before you leave, Prem, what is your take on the IPL, the dynamics of the IPL now? There's been a break. There's been some players are available, some are not available. It's a lot is going to change now. Do you think that will have a major effect, or you think we're just overlooking it? I think it'll make a huge difference. The break, the teams that are doing very well were on a roll are struggling. Those who wanted to regroup, and now I think it might get more intense given the fact that there are now playoffs. You're very clear on the 5, 6 teams that are still fighting it out for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think there will be an impact. I mean, it'd be very surprising if there isn't, because you get into a rhythm, and towards the latter half of a long tournament is when that rhythm settles, right? The rhythm of practice, play, get on a flight, go to the next venue, figure out what the conditions are, what your composition needs to be, and all of that. Uh, Through the series, as you get to the second half of the series, you've got a sense of all your players, how they are performing individually, but also how collective performance happens. I mean, you have a Josh
Right.
Hazelwood, it means your bowling is structured in a particular way. You don't have a Josh Hazelwood, you have different issues to solve for.
Stark is
All of
not
that,
Stark is not coming back, so that's a
exactly.
big,
So,
big, big thing.
yeah. So, when you have these kind of things, it is hard enough. I mean, you lose a player or two to injury, it's in the normal course of events, but suddenly this kind of break, plus this uncertainty about who will play, who will not play, the
Hmm.
question of how much the break is affected, not just your momentum, but also the touch, the feel that you have. And hanging over all of this is the imponderable question of what is the rain going to do?
Yeah.
Who's going to struggle? See, yesterday, if KKR had won against RCB, KKR would still be in the running for a playoff spot.
Now they're out.
Rain came, ruined the match. The only nice thing about it was everybody turning up in whites to celebrate Kohli. Unfortunately, you know, it became a token gesture because there was no play. But the entire match got rained out. And you're going to have that again. I mean, if you're playing in Chennai, for instance, if you're playing in Hyderabad, in down south, because remember the southwest monsoon, which is the one that is on our horizon right now, comes in from the south, comes in from Kerala,
From
and
the
then
south. Yeah.
spreads across the south before it gets to the west, which is Gujarat and Maharashtra. So, what the rains are going to do, what the
That's why
lack
it
of players
surprised
is
me that
going to
they
do.
chose the southern cities for the remainder matches. They could have gone east. They could have played in the central part. There was Lucknow. There's so many places on that side
Faisal,
that they could have played, even if they were.
Faisal, you've covered Indian cricket and Indian cricket scheduling long enough to know that the BCCI does not understand the weather map. It historically never has. We've gone and screwed this up in
Yeah.
multiple ways at multiple times. So let's not go there. But yeah, all of these questions, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. But it's also unfortunate this particular break because a lot of things are going to turn topsy turvy.
Yeah. Yeah. And some teams are going to suffer because of that. Like Delhi is already suffering because they've had a no result. I think there's no clarity whether the game that was called off, the Kings 11, will that be replayed or will
Yeah,
they share the points? I don't know about that, but it'll be interesting, Prem. So the next podcast which we are going to do, we'll have the team selection, and of course we'll also have some IPL games that would have happened, and we'll be able to then review what's really happened, what the impact has been on the teams. But thank you. It's been fantastic discussing Kohli and his replacements and his contribution. What a player. You have to agree at the end. What a player.
sure. We can end on that particular note. And we'll wait for the next podcast to see where we are with all these various questions that we've been discussing today. Thank you all for listening. As
Abs-
always, send in your comments. There's a subscribe button down below, and next to that, there is a bell icon in case you want to be notified for as successive episodes drop. Episodes are going to drop not on the usual end of the week schedule because firstly there is the IPL and you never know what that will throw up and whether it requires an out of turn episode, and immediately after that there is England. It's a test match, so we
yeah,
can't go with a you know uh, weekend schedule. That'll be middle of the test match. So yeah,
correct.
hit the bell icon, and we'll see you
Cool.
on the next. You normally say we'll see you next week. This time we have to say we'll see you in the next episode.
Sooner. Yes. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Khuda Hafiz.
Hit a long way. Out on the run is Liriano.